Welcome back. So let's go back to one of our top stories where KwaZulu-Natal Transport MEC Sibiya Duma has announced that the Durban taxi strike has been called off. This after thousands of commuters were left stranded earlier today after taxi operators downed tools over the impounding of minibus taxis by police last week. Duma says a public transport indaba will be assembled to deal with some of the issues raised during the meeting earlier. KZN Transport spokesperson, Mr. Ndabezinhle, Sibiya, joins us for more on this. Mr. Sibiya, a good evening to you. So obviously this is going to be welcomed by commuters in Durban, that they will be able to get to work and where they need to be tomorrow a lot easier. But there is the issue of now long-term, how do we sustain this for the commuters? So maybe let's take a few steps back, the kind of work that the department then had to do to step in, and how the discussion of the impoundment of minibus taxis was then resolved with taxi operators. Let's kick off there.
Yeah, no, thank you very much. First and foremost, the MEC for Transport and Human Settlements, Sibiya Duma, he has paid tribute to the mayor of eThekwini, Councillor Cyril Xaba, his team led by the city manager, Musampele. You recall, Naledi, that we had an 11-hour-long meeting starting yesterday, and we finished in the wee hours of the morning. Part of what we traced out, throughout the evening and in the morning with the leadership of eThekwini Metro City Council is the issue around, the law enforcement in eThekwini. We also reflected, on the issue of, the permits that are issued by the Provincial Department of Transport. Our highly, dedicated team from the provincial regulatory entity working with, eThekwini municipality. We agreed that, there should be a team that is going to look into the whole issue around the, taxis that, were impounded last week, in Claremont. And that is, the work that, has already gotten underway. We can confirm that, that team, is led by the MEC himself. Obviously, we've got, the leader of the provincial, regulatory entity, Sfundiswa Lunga, as well as the city manager. They are the, officials, in that team, as well as the regions, the regional chairs, because, the eThekwini Metro Taxi Council is comprising of, regions. The chairperson of the region, of the council in eThekwini is Kabazela. So we have members of, the council in regions who are part of that task team. That task team is looking into the whole issue around the taxis that have been impounded. We've got Metro Police, in that task team. We are very confident that as we move forward, all these issues that were a source of, tension and conflict, are going to be the thing of the past.
Yeah, it's interesting because we're talking about an indaba and a task team to deal with challenges within the taxi industry. But these impoundments took place because many of these taxis that were impounded were operating without permits. One would argue that that's just an issue of compliance, that all of us need to follow the law. If you are on the roads, for instance, as, just a regular South African, you do need to have your driver's license. If you are a taxi driver, you need to have your permit. That's the law. Why do we need a task team to ask the taxi industry to be compliant? And is there no other effort for the transport department to step in when a taxi strike takes place, because the fact is that these over 20 taxis that were impounded were not on the road legally?
Yeah, I think we need to separate issues, Sis Naledi. Let's talk about, the task team. That task team, has been established just to ensure that there's stability within the public transport sector. That's number one. Then number two, if you look at, eThekwini municipality, the whole issue around the issue of permit and the rank stand, it was agreed, by all parties involved in the discussion that there should be a feasibility study conducted in eThekwini just to establish as to whether we do need more taxis or the routes, in eThekwini, in and around eThekwini are saturated. That feasibility study obviously is going to get underway as a matter of urgency. Linked to that, the task team will actually be, fast-tracking, that feasibility study, because as the Department of Transport at the provincial level, our public regulatory, entity is guided by, eThekwini municipality and many more other municipalities in terms of issuing permits. When you are applying for a permit as a taxi operator, you need to indicate that, look, you have a reg stand that you obtain from the municipality, and then on the basis of that, we are then able to process your application. So it has been agreed that, look, there are gaps within, the system itself in eThekwini as well as in the province. It's something that we agreed upon, and then we said a feasibility study in eThekwini must be, constituted as a matter of urgency. That aside, the issue of indaba, we've got the e-hailing sector. As you know, that over the years, the e-hailing, drivers, they operated under the practice notice, and they operated within the framework of, the meter taxis. But now with the new, National Land and Transport Act, which was amended last year, we are now going to see the, e-hailers operating independently. Now the regulations are going to be gazetted. They are being translated. That is what the, the MEC, announced, after the meeting, this evening, having interacted with the National Minister, Barbara Christie. Now, the indaba will focus in the main around the e-hailing as a sector, where, parties will discuss how to ensure that this sector of our economy is able to leapfrog stages of development. And the taxi operators, the council itself, they said they don't have a problem with the e-hailing industry, but they have a problem with the illegal operators. There are, chance takers here who do not have an app, but who are masquerading as e-hailing, operators. But you find them, moving the stuff around. You find them eating into the base of, the taxi operators. So we've agreed that we need to isolate those elements, so that that indaba will focus in the main in issues around the overall, e-hailing industry, bringing on board the KZN e-hailing council, bringing on board the taxi operators, the Department of Transport in the province, with eThekwini being the host city of this important indaba, will also reflect on the overall, functioning of the public transport system, because we believe that as the eThekwini as well as the province, eThekwini is the backbone of the economy of the province. If you look at the month of September, we talk about tourism. We talk about domestic tourism, and the taxi industry is very critical to ensure, that we have a fully fledged, tourism industry.
Just as for the sake of tourists, as is the e-hailing industry for international and local tourists, the e-hailing industry incredibly important. And I wonder how you start talking about isolating, and ensuring that the e-hailing industry doesn't eat into the taxi industry when, the argument of competition easily, can be made. And I don't know what you make of the view here that what we're doing is protecting the taxi industry over individuals that are trying to put food on the table in really what some would argue is a free market. If you'd like to maybe touch on that. Let's respond to that.
We just need to make a very important distinction. We talk here about illegal operators. If you look at the National Land Transport Act, it says if you are involved in the public transport system, you are transporting passengers, in order to make profit, you need to have a permit. That is why the e-hailing, drivers, they are now going to be, regarded as the transport companies. The new regulations that are going to be gazetted, they are going to be regarded as transport companies, as opposed to the digital, sector in the past. Now they are going to have formal, regulations that are going to govern their sector. Now, number two, the taxi operators, they are required to have permits. So they are legal operators. Now, you have these, chance takers who are masquerading as e-hailers. At the very same time, they move around taking passengers, but they do not have a permit. Now, if you are involved, in a road accident and you are being transported by an illegal operator, chances are the road accident fund won't pay any compensation to you. The insurance won't pay any compensation to you. So that is the source of conflict. That is why all parties have agreed. The mayor of eThekwini, in the meeting last night, as well as the MEC sponsored Duma, they agreed with eThekwini Metro Taxi Council that, look, we need to close ranks and we need to hold hands and pull in the same direction. The e-hailing industry is very important. If you look at the youngsters who are fresh from high school, who are fresh from tertiary institutions, you find them in the e-hailing sector. So we have to protect them. That is why the MEC sponsor has also said, let us work together, the taxi operators, the taxi drivers, the e-hailing drivers. Let us see if the Department of Human Settlements can come on board so that they also access the first home scheme that is offered by the Department of Human Settlements.
Yeah.
Let us bring on board the Department of Labor so that you begin to have these youngsters having pay slips so that they can really live a decent lifestyle. In the past, you had these youngsters battling, to access the offices of Uber, the offices of Bolt. So now with the new regulations that are being championed at the national level, we believe that, this is going to usher in a new era. And but more importantly, the meeting last night and this, evening, it really, it was characterized by, a spirit of working together. For the very first time, we have, we have now taxi operators pulling in the same direction with both the mayor as well as the MEC, and also speaking with one voice in saying, let us protect this industry for future generations.
Yeah.
Let us embrace the evolution of the transport industry with the introduction of the e-hailing sector.
But of course, the commuters would want the priority to be, how they are treated, right? When you have commuters that simply can't afford to, use that e-hailing option and are left stranded because taxi operators are on strike, it is incredibly frustrating, and I imagine that they would want to be prioritized. But just as we move towards closing it up, you mentioned earlier this feasibility study that on the issue of permits for taxis. You say a feasibility study will be done to really look at whether or not in Durban, for instance, in eThekwini, there is a need for more taxis, or just where we need to cap those. What happens at the end of this feasibility study? Maybe the timeframes, firstly, how long that will take. And what happens at the end of this feasibility study? If it is found that perhaps you do have to put a cap on how many taxis are on the roads, what then? Do you limit the amount of permits? And what then happens when a taxi is found without a permit after that feasibility study has said, we have enough?
Well, you see, that's a very interesting question. Fortunately, the leadership of eThekwini, Metro Taxi Council, they have said, boldly, they want to see the law enforcement officers working with, with them to root out all the illegal, operators. And we have an obligation as the Department of Transport. It's something that the MEC Sponsor Duma emphasized, as well as the Mayor Cyril Kaba, that we have to protect the honest entrepreneurs within the public transport sector. So it is an obligation that we want to fulfill. It is, not going to be in our interest to abdicate that responsibility. That aside, if you look at the feasibility study will form the base upon which to also indicate, how to then assist the taxi operators to get into the entire value chain of the automotive industry. We are going to be having an automotive supplier park in northern parts of KwaZulu-Natal. As you know that over the past years, we've worked within the Durban trade port and with eThekwini to bring on board some of the overseas-based companies that are supplying automotive parks to some of the well-established car manufacturers. And we've said these companies must come and set up their plants here in Durban, South Basin. So we want to get the taxi operators integrated into the entire value chain of the automotive industry, as well as look at what we've done. The Department of Transport has already issued about 22,000 permits for the whole province of KwaZulu-Natal. About 15,000 permits have been issued in eThekwini alone. If you look at the payments that are still being processed, you look at about 6,000. But we've got an option. We've got an option of also saying, look, let us apply a moratorium on the whole issue of the new application, so that while we are cleaning up our system, we do not, receive new applications. So that at least we've got a system that is going to strengthen the public transport sector. And we want to see the taxi operators generating profit. That is what the government has
All
to do, to create an environment that is conducive for entrepreneurs to make profit and, for different sectors of the economy to also grow.
To benefit. Okay, Mr. Sibiya, I need to let you go, but just in about 20 seconds, if you can, let's confirm 2 commuters, they will be able to make use of taxis tomorrow, and are there areas that they should be aware of, perhaps that may be a concern, just for the commuter tomorrow?
Well, just, the word of, appreciation from MEC Sponsor Duma and the Mayor of eThekwini, Mr. Xaba, to the people of KwaZulu-Natal and eThekwini in particular for their patience. They've also apologized for the inconvenience. The leadership of, eThekwini Metro Council, they've also apologized. They are speaking one voice in saying, the passengers are the bosses. We want to make sure that, we take them from their homes to their various destinations. That is what we have offered to do as we move forward, holding hands and pulling in the same direction.
So tomorrow there will be taxis?
Tomorrow, definitely, there will be taxis. And we want to see, the people of KwaZulu-Natal going about with their daily, activities. And they want to see them going to the Red Dance. We want to see them going to various places of interest. KwaZulu-Natal is a province that is a gateway to Africa and the world.
All right. Mr. Ndabezinhle Sibiya there, spokesperson for KwaZulu-Natal Transport, is speaking to us. We appreciate it.